What's going on, YouTube? My name is Mr. Crippled, and today I'm going to be bringing you my full Bellona guide. Now, before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you would like to keep up with any future content, I will be leaving a link in the description below. Now, Bellona is the staple, basic solo laner that's auto attack based. She's been in Smite 1. A lot of newer players like to play her, and she's seen some pretty nice changes in this game. She still pretty much plays exactly the same. They gave her some nice buffs to her ult and to her passive, which we'll go over here in a moment. And this is definitely one of my go-to recommendations for beginner solo laners or people who are interested in the role. So this is and the fact that they put her in the base game at the beginning was really nice. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So one of the biggest changes that she got was to her passive. Now, before in Smite 1, basically you just got extra protections every single time you hit an auto attack on an enemy god, and that was basically it. It was okay. It gave her a pretty decent amount of protections, and it made it really hard to box her in Smite 1. Now they gave her changes depending on which stance she's in. So if she's using her sword and shield, which is her 1, she gets extra protections. If she's using her 3, she gets extra attack speed, which is great. And then if she's using her 2, she'll get extra damage. And every passive buff that she gets to her stances really benefits her really well in those stances, given the fact that, you know, her 2 is her main clear. Her 3, she heals every single time she hits you, so having greater attack speed is always great. And then obviously having the shield and getting extra protections is always really nice. So like my previous videos, I will be going over her abilities in order of importance. The least important being the 1, unfortunately. Now, the 1 is still very strong. Don't get it twisted, because every single time you hit them, you'll start getting stacks where your block stacks. Now they changed it to where for each enemy hit, you get 1 block stack, which is still pretty great. It makes it harder for a hunter to just nuke her down being a tank. And then every third attack, she gets a block stack back. And it does have a pretty decent slow. I believe in the first game, it used to be like a 10 to a 30% slow as you level it up. But the 1 you don't really need to level. You're not really going to be using this too much to like deal DPS. You're mostly going to be using it as an engage, a slow, or just to make sure you maintain those block stacks as you're fighting a hunter. But for the most part, you're not really going to be leveling this ability. This is probably going to be one of the last abilities you level. The next ability I want to go over is her 3, Scourge, which looks like this. Now, it does do a disarm, which is absolutely amazing for an auto character, making it to where the other characters can't fight you back. So, if you're fighting into another character like Mordred and you disarm him, it really hurts him in the fact that he can't outbox you at that point during that time. And while they can't hit you with autos, you can hit them, and you gain a pretty small amount of healing, albeit every single time you attack. But this can be remedied by putting on Death Toll, and again, we'll be going over build options. But getting a solid 14 health per hit base isn't really something to cry home about, but adding extra sustain behind it will make it really difficult for people to be able to fight her. Her most important ability, sorry about that, is her 2, Bludgeon. Now, this is going to be the first ability you level. Does insane amount of damage if you manage to get the slam down. It is your go-to clear ability, so you're going to be using this quite a bit, considering the fact that it also gives you cleave autos. And whenever you spin with this ability, the slam down does do extra damage. I don't know if it's still the same in this game because the tooltip doesn't really tell you. But even if they took that away, you do gain extra strength for every auto attack that you hit with her 2, which looks like this. Pretty wide arcing circle, and then you do a little slam down, and that does do a pretty hefty amount of damage even when you're building protections. But albeit the caveat to that is it's really easy to counter if they have knockups, stuns, and then you won't get the big slam down. So use this move carefully when you're going into team fights, or if you're trying to use this to actually get some pretty decent damage off. But for the most part, you're still going to be leveling this ability first. And then last but not least, her ultimate. Now, I knew before in Smite 1 that it did give you extra protections. In this game, they did change it a bit. So now she still does this little leap forward. and she stuns whoever is in that little circle in the center. So if they get hit, so she can stun multiple people with this, and the circle itself does seem to be a little bit bigger. In the first game, you really were only able to stun one person, or if they were extremely close together, then you could stun them. But it looks like they did increase the radius just a tad bit, so it has an easier time stunning in team fights. The biggest thing is that it grants strength, intelligence, physical protections, and magical protections. And the scaling for your abilities will go. The scaling on how much intelligence and strength that you get from the ultimate does depend on how many protections you have. So building Bellona tanky will actually benefit her ult massively, giving a crazy amount of protections and damage to her team whenever she engages, which is one of her really big problems in the first game, where even though, yeah, she could engage really easy, the banner really was only there for the stun. Now, and most people, you know, would still try to fight outside of it just to avoid the extra protections, but it really wasn't all that scary to fight into. Now, if you ult, you have to beware of this ult and make sure you stand out of it, or you're going to take massive amounts of damage. So, overall, kit's pretty simple. It's not really that hard to get into her, again, like I said. When you're comboing people, you want to try to, maybe you engage with this one, auto a bit, hit your two, auto once or twice, hit your three, and start boxing in this. Maybe you engage with your three, auto a couple of times so you're trying to get your health back. You know, there's a lot of different things that she could be doing while she's boxing, but you want to be in a stance most of the time. You don't want to be fighting in this basic stance because you're really not going to get anything for it. How she engages is completely up to her. You could start with your two, you could start with your three, you could start with your one. You really just got to play it by ear about who you're fighting. But there really isn't a set rotation. Just pick the stance you want to be in and go crazy. The only thing I really do recommend not doing is fighting in the two. Now, even though the two does give strength stats and you do get a pretty hefty amount of strength from autoing with this, it's still better just to fight in the three or the one, just given the fact that her autos are a lot quicker, and you really just want to use the two as like an ability-based move and not really fighting it. Now, again, play it by ear. If you feel like you can survive and you have enough attack speed with your two to really hammer home that damage, then by all means go for it. But remember, your autos are really slow with the stance. Even the first swing is really slow. So play that by ear. So the last thing I do want to discuss is her best items, and what better way to start than with her starters. Give me a second, because these filters are terrible. Okay, so for her starters, you really want to go with only three. Again, I'm going to start with the one that's the least important. Bluestone Pendant. Now, there was a meta back in Smite 1 where Bluestone Pendant was just the go-to for everybody. Bellona is really no different, considering that she does have three abilities that she can smack you with. And having the extra tick damage from Bluestone Pendant with your abilities and does help a bit, but in the long run, it doesn't really do anything for her. Even the upgrade. So back in Smite 1, there was a purple upgrade, which reduced their attack speed every single time you hit an ability. So it kind of helped, it kind of didn't. It was really more for like the memes or early game clear. So if you want to, you can go into Bluestone Pendant, but I don't really recommend this one. The next one I do recommend, Death Toll. Death Toll, you know, being an auto attack starter, giving her health every single time you auto, and giving her a good amount of strength and health, does really make it a great starting item for Bellona in particular, given the fact that it makes her tankier and it gives her extra sustain on top of her three, making it even harder for other auto attackers to box into her. Only bad thing about this is that even though it does give health, it doesn't really give any protections. So if you're fighting against somebody who's heavily ability based, or has built-in anti-heal, or has like really heavy CC to stop you from using your two, Death Toll can be good and bad. But either way, you can use this and get a lot of value out of it early and late game by just upgrading this. But the best one, in my opinion, would probably be Warrior's Axe. Just for the tanky aspect, and that it stacks into her ultimate, making it where she can actually do extra damage on top of the strength and protection that it already gives her. Plus, whenever you hit somebody, they take a lot of damage and you get a lot of health back on hit. And it's only on a 10-second cooldown. So even though you don't really get attack speed for this, this is still a really great option to go into. And it can actually help deal with the tanks on the enemy team. So I think Sundering Axe is probably still going to be her best starter, but Death Toll is definitely a close second. Now I want to go over her staple items. Obviously, Berserker Shield. Every auto attacker should be building this, given the fact that it does give you extra protections and attack speed once you drop below a certain threshold of health. Now, they did change it in Smite 2. It was a revert. In Smite 1, this used to be when you drop below 75% health, and now it's back down to 60. So it's not as strong as the other Smite 1, but it still does give you a bunch of physical protections, a bunch of health, some health regen, and a whopping 25% attack speed. This is very important for her. So this is definitely one of those things you want to be building into. Another good card, Shogun's Kusari. This is, again, another staple. And probably your go-to magical defense item. Especially since it gives you and your ally 20% attack speed. One of her better support items as well. And they did do a revert on this one, so now it still keeps its cooldown, unlike in Smite 1, so this is always really good. After that, you kind of play it by ear. I would say that another staple for her would be Shifters. This is really just a staple for her. It's a staple for most physical, or most solo laners in general now that can be built on both Guardians and Warriors. This card is busted. You gain power while above 75% health, and you gain protection when you're under 75% health. But this character has sustain, so it's pretty simple to stay above that 30% threshold. And since you're going to be building tanky around this card is definitely one of those must-haves. Some mentions that I did want to go over for like damage attack speed would probably be like Kin's Blade that does health damage. This is probably going to be your only damage item that you're going to be building. If you don't want Kin's Blade, then you can go Dagger of Frenzy. Dagger of Frenzy is really good and probably your go-to active that you want to be building into, given the fact that it gives you a whopping 40 extra basic attack damage and 30% attack speed while already giving you 40 strength and 15% attack speed. So this is another one of those great actives you want to build into. You can get it early, you can get it late, but this card will go crazy on Bellona. Executioner is also a really good honorable mention, just to give you extra penetration if they're not really building a lot of health, but in most cases you're probably going to be building these two over this. And then last but not least, I do want to talk about Hasten Fatalis, giving 5% pen, giving strength and attack speed, and it removes the basic attack penalty by 50%, so it's really hard to get away from her. Again, this is a niche item. You're not really going to be building this in too many matches, but there is an argument to have that there. I believe that will be all of her go-to items. Other honorable mentions, you can get an Oni Hunter's Garb to give yourself some more magical defenses and give you damage mitigations. Giving you, a whopping 12% damage mitigation for 3 enemies being near you. So this could be really crazy. Nemean is also really good. And given the fact that it reflects basic attack damage back to the attacker. And now they added an active that reflects 25% of all the damage back to attackers. That's physical damage. So this is always really good. If I say this with a grain of salt, Mystical Mail can be decent on her, but Mystical Mail, in my opinion, is kind of a wasted card. It does give you extra DPS for that early game clear if you're getting out cleared, but Bellona you really shouldn't be. And the extra damage to enemy gods, especially since you're a physical god and you mostly do physical damage, they're really not going to be able to defend against this. Since they had to build physical protections against you, so they're just taking all this extra magic damage. So this can be nice, but the damage values that you get off of this later on really isn't worth it. So again, grain of salt. Again, honorable mention, Void Shield, being able to reduce their physical protection when they're near you. This new item, Triton's Conch, is actually pretty crazy, giving you strength and intelligence and health. And then you also gain strength and intelligence as you level up. So this just gives you a crazy amount of power. I do believe this card could be one of the better starting items on solos, but we'll see. Given the fact that it doesn't really give you any protections, but it does give you a crazy amount of health and power right out the gate. So keep an eye out for this card. Last but not least, if you do want to try to get some cooldowns, Bellona doesn't really need them, but you can slap on a Genji's Guard to Genji's Guards whenever you do take magical damage, you just get reduced cooldowns. Breastplate of Valor if you want to keep spamming your abilities. Again, you don't really need this, but this is really good to have. And then the last thing I do want to talk about is anti-heal. Now, in most cases, there's not really a lot of good anti-heal cards. You can go Brawler's Ruin. You can go Ruinous Ankh if you want to. There's options that you do have, but Bellona is kind of struggling with that. So if you go anti-heal and you absolutely need it, Brawler's Ruin is probably going to be your go-to. But that's all I have for y'all. Bellona is a very straightforward god, very easy to pick up and just go in and start just doing stuff. Don't be afraid to box in this character. As you notice, she really doesn't have a run move. Even though this can put a little bit of distance, you're really not going to be using that to run. In most cases, most of the time, you're going to want to hold R2 and hope for the best. Remember, you are the tank, so they're not going to kill you quickly. Just dive in, do what you want. When this ult is up, you ult them. But if you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd like to thank y'all for y'all's time, and y'all take care.